Thank you. And please call me Sheri, everybody. My mom likes the doctor, but that's about it. So I tend to lose my voice these days, so we'll see how this goes. But some of you that have heard me speak, I always start off with this. But believe me, the whole talk won't be a complete review, I hope. But we have a lot of controversies in nutrition, and a lot of that is because we have so much variability. So why do we have so much variability in our results? So as I'm sure you're aware of, we have the combination of factors at work to allow us to respond to the diet and environment in different ways. We have our genetic code, or our genes, on the left. And we then have our diet and lifestyle, and it's really the overlap of those that will result in how we respond to our diet, and therefore resulting chronic disease or other types of conditions. But it's really not that simple. When I was learning biology ages ago, it was that simple. But we really know a lot more now about how we translate, or how that genetic code turns into proteins, and how that really affects how our body runs. And without getting into all the different terms and all that, I want to just try to make it clear that there are a lot of factors from our DNA that go into affecting how that DNA turns into us as people. So these are sometimes called, or they are called, epigenetic factors, so sometimes you'll hear of that. But those are just factors around the genes, so that's the epi, but around the genes that make it either respond to a certain environmental insult, for example, or diet, and it allows for the translation into proteins, and it's the proteins that really rule what our bodies do, because that's how we make a variety of other chemicals in our body as well. Another thing that influences how we're going to respond to diet, which is going to really influence how we're doing these studies, because everybody's so different. So we've got the DNA that's different, and we've always wanted to consider that. We also have now the epigenetic factors, and then now the microbiome. So the microbiome is one of the probably most popular topics in nutrition right now. Sometimes Rachel and I kid around saying we're really like the Department of Microbiomology, because the microbiome are just thousands of organisms that live within us. A lot of it's within our gut, within our GI tract, but they're in all parts of our body. And those microbiomes are the bacteria, the microorganisms are there. They have their own metabolism. And so they will influence how we respond to different food components, as well as different types of environmental factors as well. And everybody's microbiome might be a little different. So if I, let's say, go to Italy, because I like to go there in my head, where the water's very clean and all that, I still might get sick because I don't have that same microbiome as somebody who's grown up there. So now, which we won't get into now, but a lot of studies will go into breaking the results down by microbiome factors, and there's all these interesting data analysis programs to see what other factors are influencing how an individual is responding to diet. So when you see these big headlines and all this stuff about different responses and how we're changing our minds in studies, if you have a huge group of people in a study, and that's what we all used to want to get, right? A huge group, because that'll allow us to look at all the variation and make some kind of conclusion. But you're going to have groups of people that might not fall in that mean response because of their microbiome, and they might have to be looked at differently. So it comes into play when we have any of our public health recommendations and all that. It's very difficult to make general statements. So with that, we're going to do questions, because we want to put your son up here.
No, we're doing questions after each section.
Okay, because that's just sort of like a quick overview. If anybody have any questions on that? Okay. Oh, we do.
Into a little bit more detail about the microbiome, or are you going to address that later on?
We're not going to go into too much detail on the microbiome. I mean, there are studies that are taking a look at people in different areas that might respond to, for example, lipid concentrations in the diet, especially omega-3s, because they might be metabolizing the different fatty acids a little bit differently. So that's one relatively hot area of research, was the microbiome influences on fatty acid metabolism. So there's studies like that, but it'd be hard to go into detail on each one of those unless we had a separate talk on that, which we could do one day.
Yes.
That would be great.
Okay.
I've heard of ones about obesity. That
Definitely with obesity and anything related to inflammation. So obesity, I'll talk about that, but how it's related to inflammation, because everything's related to inflammation. And how our body has that inflammatory response is influenced by the microbiome as well. Same with diabetes. So really, if you think of everything, it's related to the microbiome.
Yeah.
And everything's related to inflammation.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so now, oh, we do.
I have one. So, you know, a lot of times when we think about the microbiome, we think about our gut. But the microbiome is actually more than that, I understand.
Yeah, the majority of organisms, if you looked at ratios or if you looked at percentages, are found in the mouth, the GI tract in general. But you have in other parts of the body as well. But majority, that's why you're thinking that way, because that's where we're talking about a lot of the metabolism of nutrients.
I've heard at a cellular level, we are actually more microbiome than we are ourselves.
We are.
We're
I mean, you
more-
can go through the counts and all
Right.
that.
So we're not us. We're a bunch of bugs. So.
Yeah, but so how could we have ever made these public health recommendations when we didn't know about the microbiome? So, I mean, I hate to say who knows what these mean, but who knows what they mean.